Creative Magic Club. What's up? This is Sarah Mack and welcome to Creative Magic Club. Together, we'll discover inspirational stories of creative entrepreneurs living out their dreams, doing the work they are most passionate about, and building wealth in magical and fun ways. While building a six-figure income as a writer and coach, helping other women to launch their dream businesses, I've connected with so many incredible people and seen it proven again and again that you can thrive financially doing whatever it is you are passionate about. I'm here to share life-changing strategies for mindset, making money, and reaching more people with your work in a business and life filled with creativity, freedom, and fun. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to announce my guest today, Shirley Harvey, who is an artist and spiritual coach who creates sacred soul paintings, merging consciousness with the highest essence of her clients, and where she channels a visual reflection of their soul, which includes transmissions alongside a really powerful painting that is basically a visual reflection of their highest soul essence. Shirley, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So me and Shirley go way back. We met in Montreal through B School, and we've done quite a few bits and bobs of work together since then. And she's really amazing. So, and it's been really exciting watching her journey. When we met, she was focused on illustrating and writing really beautiful books, children's books, as well as books that were more accessible to adults as well. And she's transitioned into doing these incredible paintings, and it's been so exciting to watch. So I'm excited to talk to you today, Shirley. And I would love for you to tell us a little bit about your journey. Like, what is it that led you to doing this work that you're doing now?
Okay, so I would say that's been a lifelong journey. Like from sitting under the dining table as a child, writing little poems and drawing pictures of animals and talking to my cuddly toys, to the transition of where I was almost doing that in Montreal, but the cuddly toys were my cats. It led me to doing a degree in fine arts originally, and where I really focused, like my main point of focus was on this journey of coming home to yourself. And so I did a lot of work and a lot of sort of research around Jonathan Livingston Seagull and this character, Dorothy, who, because there's obviously the yellow brick road and there's the gay iconography of Dorothy, but the story of Dorothy is that she and everyone in it follows their own path and finds their truth, their true north of what's true about them. And it's whatever was outside of them, they find inside of them. And so I always was really fascinated by this soul journey, right, of coming back to yourself and what's your true north and what's your what's that sort of grounding solid line of light that's boom, I'm right in alignment. And so I explored that in my degree. And when I graduated, I think I had so much of the art world. I was oh, I hate this. I'm never picking up a paintbrush or a pencil ever again. Fuck off. I really was, sorry to swear, but it was I literally turned my back on the art world. I also found it very much I was expressing my soul, and it was couldn't handle the criticism, right? It was so oh, such a dramatic artist. And then one thing led to another, and I ended up discovering homeopathy, and then basically went down this rabbit hole of homeopathy for 8 years. I studied homeopathic medicine and then practiced for further however many years after that, really, since my son was born. So probably about 5 years I practiced after that. And I was also practicing sort of the last 2 years of study, because you gain a license to practice under supervision. And then, so what I found was I was working one-on-one with patients who were coming with really deep pathology or with really deep mental and emotional issues. And what I found over and over and over again was people out of alignment with their soul. People who had just gone took a path and ended up over in no man's land over there, completely lost, no idea how to get back onto the path, and just really just not able, but trying to make that transition back. And the more and more I worked with energy medicine, the more and more I became aware that there's like this little pill, like this homeopathic pill, was just not necessary. And it was still so third, like 3D paradigm. It was still so old paradigm, because it's like we're so obsessed with the materialism. You know, we're so obsessed with having this material substance, right? We hadn't, I think now, like, you know, 10, 15 years later, people are a little bit more like, oh yeah, everything's energy. But still the majority of the public think that they have to have a pill with actual substance in it to make a difference. Whereas energy medicine isn't like that. And the more and more I practiced, the more and more I found that as I would reflect back the story to them, and like almost like their symptom picture and their higher self picture, they didn't need the actual pill. They needed the energetics of the story. They needed the, like, to know what was going on and to hear this story and this narrative. And that would be what would bring them back. And like one woman, you know, she really needed a snake remedy. And like all of her symptoms really fitted in with this. And I thought, I'm not going to give her the remedy. And I said, go and research snakes. Like, just go and read the symbology of snakes, like the understanding of snakes. And she came back to me after that one prescription of like reading about snakes, and just was like so much had opened up in her life for her. So much like connection. And it had brought her from like being completely like all over the place, not quite sure where she is, to just this centered point, because she just had the story and the energy reflected to her. And I found that when I was working with patients one-on-one, it was exhausting. I would be sucked into very deep, very dark stories. And like, if I had more than like one patient in a day, sometimes I had like 2 or 3 back to back, I'd have such a headache. I'd have to go to bed for 2 hours afterwards. I was just gone. Like, I couldn't do it. And, you know, as a fairly new mum, that wasn't at all sustainable. And it's not sustainable. Like, you know, physician, heal thyself is one of the things we hear all the time. And so like, if as the practitioner and the healer, I'm completely depleted, how is that helping anybody? And so I remember I did this like 9-month business spiritual women's group, and it was 9 months because it was like the time of gestation of period, and it was this really amazing thing. And at the end of the 9 months, I remember sitting there, and it was like 2 weeks before I moved to Montreal. And I said to the woman running it, like the mentor, I don't want to do homeopathy anymore. I want to be an artist. And it was really funny. And we sat there reflecting at lunch, and she said, isn't it funny how you took like a business mentoring group for 9 months, and the end result is you're now giving up your business? And it was where I was completely out of alignment. I wasn't quite out, like I wasn't completely out of alignment, but I was definitely, I had veered down a different path than what my soul wanted. And so there was always this discord down that path. I ended up moving to Montreal with I think he was just 4 or just 5. I can't even remember. That's so bad. 2013. So he's 11 now, whatever the math is. With my son and my husband, his dad at the time. And within 3 months of landing here in Montreal, our marriage broke down. And it was just really evident. Like the minute I got off the plane here, even we were supposed to go to Australia, and then it all fell through. And then 6 months later, they offered us Montreal, like through his work. And the minute he said it to me, I said, well, that's okay then, because that's my spiritual home, and that's where I need to go and heal. And then I was like, who said that? Like, where did that come from? Like, it just like came out of nowhere. Like this just like voice of God in some ways, of just my truth, right? And it was so like, holy fuck, where did that come from? And then when we got off the plane here, it was like, boom, I'm home. And I'd never felt at home in England. And then it was like, oh my God, I'm with the wrong man. I'm in the wrong relationship. This isn't right. I need and so within 3 months, our relationship had ended. It was a real mess. Like, it was just, you know, my poor son had moved countries. He'd gone from big house in suburbs with 2 cars, massive garden, you know, trampoline in the garden, vegetable patch, all of it, to like suddenly living in a tiny little apartment. I mean, you know what Montreal apartments are like. They're really not the nicest. You know, no garden, and going to a bilingual school. Like, it was a bit of a shit show for a few years. That's all I'm going to say. But I remember at one point it was the spring just after we arrived. So we arrived just in November, like before the worst winter on record in 65 years. Like, it was brutal. And when the spring came, I remember I would just walk the streets and I would almost just be guided by spirit. My body would be moved. Initially, I used to use like a pendulum, and it would just point me in a direction, and I'd come out opposite all these really cool places that I'd never discovered. And like, I was vegan at the time, and it would take me to like down these obscure roads and alleyways, and then suddenly there'd be this vegan cafe or restaurant right in front of me, and I'd be like, oh, wow. And I remember being guided to go to the park and take a scrap of paper. And I thought, okay, I'll go to the park, take a scrap of paper. And I'm sat there and I'm just guided to like look down at my feet, like look at the floor. So I look at the floor and there's this like pen lying there, and it's like, pick it up. So I pick it up, and it's like someone's just thrown it away. It's like half run out, right? And they said, start drawing. So I started drawing, and I was just literally like, almost like spirit had my hand and was just guiding me. And it was just like, I was drawing like these Fibonacci spirals over and over and over again. And then I suddenly looked, and I had drawn, to my amazement, like this amazing snail from a really bizarre perspective, that if I was drawing a snail, I would never draw from that perspective. Like, it was just like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, it came through me. It wasn't like, I did not say, I'm going to draw a snail. Like, it came through me. So then I started like just playing with this and drawing and allowing spirit to guide me. And then it kind of went really bad, and like everything got worse and worse and worse. The more I was kind of like, come on. And then the message from spirit was like, you don't need us. Like you are capable. Like, you know, I'm putting this power outside of me, whereas actually all I need to do is just draw and have fun and do what I want. And then I would just draw these animals, and I ended up opening an Etsy shop and doing really well with it, and selling all these illustrations of like animals doing human things. And I used to do all these beautiful watercolors of very sort of Beatrix Potter, like in some ways, very realistic, but like they'd be skateboarding or BMXing or sitting in a coffee shop drinking, like all kinds of silly things. Sometimes I'd have like I'd have a little salmon, like I would have a trout or a salmon, I can't remember what it was, but like ice fishing, and like I'd play with all these little notions. But every time I was painting, I wouldn't know what I was going to paint before I started, and I got very aware that there was almost like these little animal characters coming, wanting to be made manifest on the page. And it was almost like, as I was painting, the minute I drew their eyes, it would be like, oh, hi, there you are, like, who are you? And it would be like this really beautiful little connection with these animals, like with what felt like an entity of its own wanting to be made manifest through me. So I ran that shop for like a few years. I mean, it's still on now. I still get the occasional order. I don't put any effort into it anymore, but like, it was fun. And then what happened with that as well was, around the same time, I was going through some real difficulties with my son, who was really struggling to cope with the move, the divorce, that like everything that had happened in his life. And he was like 5.5, 6. And if we hadn't had Oh, The Places You Go by Dr. Seuss at that time, I don't think we would have ever got through it. Like, I wouldn't have got through it. Like, we read that book night after night and sobbed and cried and tried to make sense of this world. And one of the things I realized when I went through that was this little boy was like, Mummy, what, you know, like, what's up? Like, give me the answers. You're the grown up. And I was kind of like, Mummy, give me the answers. Like, like, oh, fuck, I'm the grown up. And fuck, like, and like not having answers. So then I ended up writing those books that were like kids books for adults that would just sort of, they dealt with, there's one on love, there was one on loss, there's one on sort of joy and how to find your inner joy, there's one on personal growth, and then there's one which is a collection of other things. I even have a book about doggy death too, which I think you know, like as well, which was, you know, it was almost like a gift to a friend of mine whose dog was 19 and dying basically, and it was a huge loss for her, like especially having her never having children. Her dogs were her children. And then one day I just got this like whim of like, I don't like, my watercolors were very controlled and very small, and I did a lot of miniature watercolors. Like a lot of the things I sold in my shop, like originals, were like this big, like an inch by an inch, and and it was very beautiful to be so controlled. And then suddenly one day I was just like, I just have this whim. I want to paint big. I want to get a big canvas, and I want to get some big brushes and some acrylic paints, and I want to just go for it. And then what happened was I realized I was channeling these really powerful, potent, like visual transmissions from spirit. From I like this one behind me was actually it's Venus that came through, and the whole transmission that came through with this painting was about like, you are the cornucopia. And so there's all these like embedded codes of like abundance within, and like within this painting, and this like very beautiful, loving, abundant transmission from Venus. And then I started working with clients, and I just became very aware that I was able to completely just channel what they needed and their highest essence and their spirit guides and their teams. And that these paintings were like filled with like, with love and with codes of like healing and holding, like almost like they hold the space for the family. And so I started noticing that clients were having like these amazing, crazy ass things happen once they got my paintings in their homes. And like from, you know, one woman whose husband had been unemployed and depressed for years was suddenly like doing his music, being creative, had got a job, and like then they started moving house. It's gone on and on. They've moved up, like they moved house several times. Both their children, they were a blended family, and they had two girls, and they both came out as non-binary around the same time. And like everyone in the family started to kind of like come back and live their soul, like that, you know, they all kind of came back into alignment with where they were headed and what they were doing. Another client, you know, she went through some huge changes that involved like leaving her abusive alcoholic husband. He then passed away very quickly after she left him, but she literally doulaed him through death. And he's now like one of her like top spirit guides, right? And within doing that, she was able to like step fully into her soul journey, and she ended up going to Egypt and like doing this huge like pilgrimage to the Hathor temples, and she had all kinds of amazing synchronistic, I don't know. I'm studying English literature now, I should know. Like she had all these amazing things happen that made her, that enabled her to basically go to some of these like really remote places and sacred sites that were like off limits to tourists in the middle of a war zone. And she was able to get in there safely and get out and do the work she needed to do, which was like opening up light portals and, you know, doing some serious light work on planet Earth. And so, you know, and her painting has since, she contacted me, and it was like, she said it was like holding space for her dad during, like, he was very ill and on death's bed and had a lot of darkness, and it kind of helped pull the darkness, like pull him out of the darkness and into the light. And he's ended up, I think he's still alive now, I think. I haven't checked in with her, but that was a few months ago. And yeah, like there's been all these amazing things happen. So it's like, it's just a joy. And I realized like, it's so healing, and the transmissions that come through like are super powerful, super funny. Some of them really edgy. Like I've had, you know, this client behind me now, she's had some amazing transmissions, some that have been really hard for her to swallow, but have ultimately helped her completely step into this path within her business, and like to launch this program, the Wealthy Womb, and to really stand in the power of that. And as a result, she's had like her most like financially successful month ever. She's had like so many breakthroughs with that. She's just had so much love. There's so much love in this painting. It's just been beautiful. Like she's had transmissions from her elders, just, you know, as like a gratitude, a deep gratitude from the indigenous elders of the land that she lives on, in reverence to her for the work she is doing, not just in her business, but in her day-to-day life and how she lives her life. And even in how she gardens and everything, there was this beautiful transmission. And I have another woman, and it was like literally 3 a.m. in the morning. I can't sleep. And it's like, it's the unicorns. You've got to tell this woman she needs to have more sex.
The unicorn.
And you need to tell her now. And I'm like, it's 3 a.m. in the morning. I know she's in a different time zone, but it's still the middle of the night for her too, right? And they're like, you're going to forget in the morning. You've got to do it now. So I get on WhatsApp. We use WhatsApp to communicate. And so I send her a voice message. I've got a message from you. I'm so sorry. I really hope your phone's off. Like, the unicorns want you to have more sex. And then I turn my phone off, I go straight to sleep, and I'm passed out, and I completely forgot about it. And in the morning, she's obviously a couple of hours ahead of me, and she's woken up, and she sent me this message, just like pissing herself laughing, but basically saying it was so apt and true, and that she just said there's something stopping her. Like she said, the love in her relationship is amazing, but there's just this lack of that. They're not taking it to the next level. In like, you know, they're kissing lots, but that's it. And what came through for her was this transmission of like, she'd got a baby 1.5 years old, and it was like she'd in her head and her body had associated intimacy with this entire like the sort of like the trauma of the change of like having a baby, of like being pregnant, the body going through the whole pregnancy, then giving birth, then breastfeeding, not to mention the whole change on her life, you know, like this. And although she was super happy and he was super happy and they've got a loving family, subconsciously she'd absorbed like this fear of intimacy because it leads to this crazy ass change of life.
Wow.
And this transmission came through for her, and then she's like, and so I relayed that back to her, and she's like, wow, like, yes. And then since then she's been able to shift it because it's been this reflection. I haven't even started her painting yet.
Oh my goodness, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's like,
I love hearing all of these stories, and I love just like the progression that you've been through in, you know, finding your way and being able to serve and support people, and also really honoring your sensitivity and seeing how, you know, working in these certain modalities just clearly wasn't working for you, and really just following the breadcrumbs, as I like to call it, and just, you know, really expanding your belief in what's possible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who could have, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, no one could have told you that this is what you're going to end up doing. And even if they had, you probably wouldn't have believed it, right? But it's just been step by step.
And I still don't, right? I still pretty much every day go, what? Isn't this just bullshit? I don't know. And then it comes through and there's like no denying it. It's like, whoa, fuck. Like, and my clients are like, whoa. And, you know, so it's hilarious that there's still this voice in my head going, you're a fraud. You can't do that. This is bullshit. This is like, get a real job. It's like, okay, whatever. Like, I think one of the steps of doing this, like when you come into your soul alignment, is like the voices are still there, right? The doubts and the fears and all of this resistance is still there every single day. And I think people feel that like, oh, the minute I'm in soul alignment, it's all going to go away and everything's going to be amazing. But then even though it's all still there, there is still this just core truth. And that core truth is very still, and it's very solid, and it's very unwavering. And so the voice is kind of like, and then there's just this core truth of like, I know what my core truth is. So have your say. Sometimes I let them rampage, I'm not come out of a little fairly intense period of that. And I also always know that like sometimes when we allow them that voice and that chance to be seen and heard and experienced, it's like far quicker and easier for it to dissolve and to get to the next stage of this personal growth. And, this sort of, but all the way through it, there's just this centered like stillness. And it's, once you find that, it's hard to lose it.
Right. And it's just that moment to moment practice to get there, and the trial and error, and just becoming more and more, it's like embedding that skill, because it is a skill really at the end of the day.
And I find as well that like sometimes like it's not always like this. It's like finding the moment in all the fucking chaos when you are believing all the stories, where you just take almost like a tiny little step backwards and go, isn't this cute? Look at this lovely little drama you've created for yourself. Enjoy. And then you just pop back in, and then it's like almost like you can then live through the drama, kind of knowing that like it's all okay, like I've created this, whatever. It's interesting.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. There's so many amazing nuggets of wisdom in there that I'm sure will resonate with a lot of people. So, excuse me. How can people find you to learn more about your work and your paintings?
Okay, so I have a website, soulartbyshirley.com is the most stable place to find me. I am on Facebook just as Shirley Harvey on my personal profile. I do a lot. I'm actually transitioning off Facebook. It's a huge step for me. There's a lot of fear involved because that's where all my clientele are at the moment. But one of the things that I'm really like, I believe we should live our whole life in alignment, and certain things with Facebook feel very unaligned. There's a lot of censorship, there's a lot of control, there's a lot of like backhanded selling of our information, there's a lot of like you won't, and it yourself, like you go look at one item on a website and before you know it, you're getting 1,000 adverts on your Facebook feed. There's a lot of censoring and controlling who sees what you see. So there's a lot of me. So I've been transitioning to a platform called MeWe, MEWE. So I think like that's where I'll be found in the future. There's no advertising on there. It's much more ethically run.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a big step. It's a big scary thing. But soulartbyshirley.com is where is like my solid home base.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And you're amazing. And I can't wait to see what other beautiful paintings and magic you create going forward.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com, and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.